to endorse a particular candidate when it comes to electioneering in the National Assembly?
Well, thank you very much for this interactive. The Northern Elders Forum, like other fora in the country, very concerned about the well-being of this country in every respect, political, economic, social, security, and so on. And from time to time, issues arise, and that views are sought, or views are given where even they are not sought in the interest of the country. I think the current situation on ground now, having gone through the election process, not quite completed, because there are candidates in a democracy who are not satisfied with the way the elections went, and the Constitution of this country provides ample opportunities for people who feel dissatisfied to approach our legal system, the court of law, for interpretation, for resolution of their contentions, and so on, as to whether somebody else has gone wrong and they're right, and so on and so forth. And this is why I would say, yes, the entire election process is still in a process not quite complete, because the candidates, there are some candidates who are in court to challenge the outcome of the election on the basis of facts they are hopeful to present to the tribunals. Of course, the main area now that appears to be of special interest and concern is the other branch of government. Our Constitution provides for 3 autonomous branches of government, and not that they should not work together, but they invariably work together in the overall interest of the country. So they serve as some kind of oversight checks, depending on what is happening in other branches of government. So the Constitution is very clear about the separation of power here between the executive branch, the legislative arm, and the judiciary. And right now, we are at a point when the National Assembly is supposed to have leaders. And the leadership of the 2 chambers, one is President of the Senate, and the other one is the Speaker of the House of Reps. And each chamber, even within the context of the National Assembly, is also independent to decide how this should be done. But the bottom line, the basic foundation, is the Constitution of the country, which stipulates very clearly that there will be such and such an institution. And that's how this institution will be formed, and how the institution is supposed to provide its leadership. So as far as we know, and in our own various discussions at the level of society, particularly at our level in the Northern Elders Forum, is to emphasize this point. The Constitution should be strictly adhered to by all concerned. And here by all concerned, I mean that the major concern is the National Assembly trying, or that it's expected after declaration, to decide who will be the President of the Senate and who will be the Speaker and the other various other appendages that go with them. So we have already discussed this, and I think we have also, as Northern Elders Forum, come out to, through our Director of Publicity and Advocacy, who granted a number of interviews through the various channels of communication, radio, television, and so on, to send this message from our forum, and I think this message is also shared by a huge section of this country, that the National Assembly is an autonomous body that is supposed to decide is not just its leadership, but is also its mode of operation, as long as it is within the larger frame of the constitution of this country. So, if we are going to be honest in giving advice to people who care about this country, is that the National Assembly members-elect should be left entirely alone to decide who their leaders will be in a process that the Assembly, the various chambers have themselves decided. They have rules that are very clear as to how nominations for those who are interested will come. You talked about somebody, a party that has larger numbers. I'm not worried about the large numbers. I'm worried about each member, whether he comes from a small party or whether he comes from a big party, to be able to say, yes, I'm interested in being the Senate President, or I'm interested in being the Speaker of the House of Reps. And it is the process that is already stipulated that will determine whether this man who comes from a small party will be elected by his colleagues. So I think the issue now is not that this is a ruling party or this is the majority party. It's a matter of allowing the process to take its full course. And this course is for the members-elect to determine who the leaders will be through the process that has been agreed by them in their chambers. And this is an honest advice one would like to give to those who are in position of responsibility, and to avoid a situation where perhaps we run into situations where we say something has been imposed, something has been. We experienced this in 2025 or 19 and so on. There was a lot of interference, and I remember Saraki sitting in the chamber today as President of the Senate, and he is in court tomorrow for whatever reasons. Up to now, we have not been able to understand why this has happened. But what had happened has been because there had been interference in the manner in which the National Assembly was not allowed to freely and truly freely choose its own leaders. And I hope this will not happen this time. And we'd like to appeal to our leaders and friends and associates in parties, in government, and so on, that this is an honest, genuine advice, that the National Assembly should be free. And this is the kind of democracy we require. Look at what is happening, for example, if I may digress a little bit, in the United States. See what President Biden is going through with the Congress on what appears to us minor matters, but the Congress has powers. And even if really we're going to apply the constitution of this country, which is based on presidential system of government, which we borrowed from the United States, if our power rests more in the National Assembly than it rests somewhere else. But this is not. This is when the time comes for us to restructure or debate on restructuring Nigeria and moving from a system that works and a system that doesn't work and so on.
So to address further, it means you are faulting the decision of the ruling party.
Pardon?
I said you are faulting the decision of the ruling party.
No, I mean, there is no such thing as a ruling party in this process. The ruling party is not in charge of the National Assembly. The National Assembly is an independent body. The ruling party has members in the National Assembly, and they may direct their members to do what their party would want them to do. But then they should allow other members of the National Assembly who don't belong to that ruling party to also exercise their rights. And their rights include the demand for leadership of the House, even if they don't have the large numbers that people see from outside. It's an issue that is very internal. And the people who had served who are serving in the National, some of them have served for almost 20 years now. And they know themselves, they know who is who, and so on. There may be new members and so on, but new members will not come as total strangers. They know themselves, and they should be able to say, this is the material we require as our leadership. And I think this should be respected. And I'm happy to hear from, I hope the sources are reliable, that the President himself has said that he is ready to work with anybody that is presented by the National Assembly. So I think on this point I'd like to commend him and congratulate him for accepting that the National Assembly is an independent body, and whatever they decide in terms of their leadership would eventually work with the executive in running the affairs of this country.
Sir, there are some persons who believe that in the case of equity, a certain region of the country should produce the president and speaker of the House of Assembly. I know of this view too, that should.
Well, you have to define equity for me to understand exactly what you mean. Equity. In terms of equity, we would like to have 36 presidents in Nigeria, so that each state of the federation and what do you call it? Constitutionally, they say they all converge one place as equals, and that. But the Constitution has been very sensitive about this, because, for example, now, if you read the Constitution, you will find that each state of the federation would have a member in the National Executive Council, which means that there will be a minister from each state of the federation in the Executive Council of the country. And also, there are various provisions to make sure that the diversity in Nigeria is respected as much as possible. And that's why you have in the law Federal Character Commission, and they are there to check whether certain institutions are not respecting the diversity or the character of the country in terms of fairness, equity, and so on. And I don't know where this issue is. I don't know which part of the country is not represented in the affairs of the country as of now. I don't know. Which one? You may want to point it out. Be a bit more specific, then would perhaps be in a better position to answer that question.
No, the fact is that since the president is from the South, then others are saying that it is better that the Senate president or these key principal officers come from other parts of the country. That is the equity method.
Well, if you really take us to that point, which is a very sad point to me, North and South, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. Yes, and yes, the president is from the South. He's the head of the executive branch. The head of the judiciary at the moment, as far as I know, is also from the South. You are also saying that the head of the legislature should also come from the South. Is that equity? Is that fairness in terms of how offices of this nature should be spread across the country? No, certainly not. I'm 85 years old.